Yes, well, I'll move beyond pet food. I think what's happening is supply and demand seem to be out of whack, and we seem to have a lot of difficulty getting it back together. Resources are strained, and as we learned during the time of COVID, the global transportation structure is under a great deal of stress. It's not as bad as it was 6 months ago, but we still got container ships backed up outside of West Coast ports, and we're going to have, I think, continuing shortages. The result is that companies are reevaluating their supply chains. And the problem, of course, is that you don't do that overnight. You've got contractual obligations, and you've got the problem of finding new ones. And that doesn't just mean identifying somebody. You've got to satisfy yourself that their quality is going to be good. Their delivery is going to be good. They can match the volume that you need. They can scale up as needed. All of that takes time. And so you're going to see some evolution over time. But what supply chain managers have learned, and they learned it because of Trump's tariffs, and they learned it because of COVID, and they're learning it again because of Russia, is that it's not just lowest price, best quality, best delivery. It's also resilience. How do we make sure that our supply chain is not compromised and that we can get what we need? And that means you have to have a plan B and a plan C and build more local production into your supply chain so you've got alternatives. No more all eggs in one basket.
Let's talk a little bit more about these corporations, these non-state actors that have, even cultural groups that have been uniform in exiting Russia in some form or another, either as a market or as a partner. I must say, I was a little surprised about how this went along over the last few weeks, because that was something that I had not considered something that was possible. But there must be a lot of pressure from shareholders, a lot of pressure from stakeholders, maybe even employees in some of these business and other organizations. It really does mean that what happens when you are the embodiment of the state, such as Putin, the knockdown effects that you could have on your country's position in the world, quite apart from military and even economic. Is that something that surprised you as well?
A little bit, yes. And I think it's all due, actually, to these. This is a much more public war than past wars. I mean, all wars are public because they're happening. But what you've got now are people in real time taking photos, making videos of burning buildings, of rocket attacks, of bodies in the street, posting them immediately on the internet, and they're going viral. This war is being brought home, every day into people's houses. And the Russians are doing their best to cover it up in Russia, but the rest of the world is seeing that. And I think you can see it in public opinion. I think you can see it in the level of outrage. People understanding that this was an unprovoked attack, and the result is extraordinary damage and death, all for no purpose. And this is, I think, solidifying global public opinion against Russia and against Putin. And he and the country are going to be pariahs for a long time. I mean, you may find a few countries secretly cooperating. You don't find very many countries standing up and saying he's doing the right thing. He's really isolated.
Returning to supply chains for a second, you've talked about how there could be some next stage supply chain disruptions, beyond oil and gas. You just mentioned food supply, critical minerals. Are these things that you see just around the corner, or is this a longer term threat?
Both. One problem is it's hard to predict. I had a call yesterday with some think tank colleagues in Europe, and we talked about this, and I said, what's going on there? And one of the comments they made is that at least one major company has had to shut down its auto assembly line because they were getting cables, wire cables from Ukraine. They can't get them anymore. That was kind of unexpected, and that's one of the problems with supply chains. In a globally integrated economy, there are always these unexpected developments, and there's always going to be collateral damage. For the United States, we're less exposed than Russia is. We don't depend on Russian. I'm sorry, we're less exposed than Europe is.
Right.
We don't depend on Russia for
Bill,
much
we're
energy.
just going to take another brief break.